in Southeast Asia. So over 62% said that they were already had retail media as part of their plan. Whereas all this money that's flowing into retail media, it was 75% was coming from the traditional shopper marketing or trade marketing budgets. Every big retailer in Southeast Asia, from Fair Price to the DFI Group, they all either have a bunch of initiatives underway or exciting new things that they're about to launch. There's no doubt about it that retail media in Southeast Asia is going to explode over the next couple of years. If you're an insurance company or a finance company and you're going to run banner ads on a retail media platform, forget about it. Now, if you work with the platform and say, look, we want to do something interesting on your platform, the shopper marketing piece is probably $1 trillion on its own. And then the advertising is $1 trillion. And they're both sort of eyeing each other up, saying, come over here. We've got some advertisers who are really interested in our data segments, but they maybe only buy video, for example, and we don't really have pre-roll video on Carousel. What can we do from an audience extension perspective? So we partnered with the Trade Desk a couple of years ago and we launched a Carousel Connect.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the $1 Trillion Ads podcast. The digital advertising market is going to reach $1 trillion very soon. And there are a lot of interesting categories like retail media, connected TV, which are shaping this transition. So with me is a guest who has been in retail media much before the term retail media started, probably. And without further ado, let me welcome JJ Eastwood, the managing director of Carousell Media. So welcome, JJ, to the podcast. And maybe you could start by saying, how did you enter advertising in first place?
Thanks for having me on the podcast. I was at eBay in 2010 to 2013, and we were talking about retail media then. Unfortunately, that term just didn't quite stick. If you talk about retail media as a whole, it's probably been talked about for 50 years, more in lines with shopper marketing. But I think the retail media, which we are going to discuss today, the online retail media, it kind of took off, was it Q1 2022, when Walmart and Amazon for the first time released their advertising numbers, and everyone sort of took a step back and was like, whoa, hold on a second. We add these two together, and eBay and the likes, we've got $100 billion ad business, this retail media, which was kind of flying under the radar until that time.
Yeah, the power of numbers, right? Now, I think it's amazing that it's going to be fastest 100 billion in ads, right? So obviously, US is where the action is for retail media, but maybe you could also give a perspective on how you see the market in Asia Pacific, especially Southeast Asia, given that we don't see the big retailers also joining the party. So it would be great to have your perspective on this whole US versus APAC retail media market.
I think every big retailer in this region, from Fair Price to the DFI Group, they all either have a bunch of initiatives underway or exciting new things that they're about to launch. So I think it's unfair, perhaps, if we were to say that that's not happening here. It's just probably not as vocal, and I guess you don't have the Amazon here, you don't have the Walmarts and the eBay. So I think it's a really interesting space in Southeast Asia. We did a research piece with the IAB last year, and we were asking, what are some of the key trends in the space? And what we were kind of surprised about is that while, most people would think that retail media is quite nascent in Southeast Asia, over 62% of the people that we surveyed, and just to give you some context here, this was 1,500 senior leaders across Southeast Asia within ad agencies and marketers direct. So over 62% said that they were already had retail media as part of their plan, which is really interesting to us, because a year ago we was like, well, there isn't a lot of players here. Where exactly are spending their money? But what kind of brought that to light a little bit was when we asked the follow-up question, was like, okay, if you're spending money in the channel, how much are you allocating out of your budget? And the vast majority, so around 70%, were saying it was less than 5%, which was, it made more sense. It's like, okay, they're dipping their toe in the water with the retail media partners that are here. But the super interesting thing was that when we asked, okay, are you going to spend more in the channel in the future? Virtually everyone, 99% of them, said that they were. Now, we asked a bunch of questions to the survey participants in this region, and one of the questions which really kind of had a big difference between Southeast Asia and the US is, where are the marketing budgets coming from? Where is all this money that's flowing into retail media? So eMarketer asked that in the US, and I believe the answer they got was about 75% of the money going into retail media was coming from traditional media budgets. But in this region, it was completely opposite. It was 75% was coming from the traditional shopper marketing or trade marketing budgets. So I think that's one of the biggest differences that we have here at the moment. But one of the things that I was thinking, and would need to validate this by following up with a survey over time, is that perhaps in the early days, that's what happens. The shopper marketing budgets shift initially, and then the trade marketing budgets come after that once the channel's proven itself.
Well, that's very interesting. Maybe one reason could be that the trade marketing or below the line is fairly not so organized in some parts of Southeast Asia. So it's probably a way to make that money more efficient. And the good news then for maybe publishers is that you're kind of dipping into two pockets of the advertiser money, which is always good.
Yeah. That's the very exciting thing for publishers and for the retailers is that, for the retailers it's different, right? The retailers already have the shopper marketing budgets, and they want to see the traditional ad budget shifting into their medium. That's incremental for them. And then on the ad side of things, it's a complete opposite. There's $2 trillion industries here, side by side. The shopper marketing piece is probably $1 trillion on its own, and then the advertising is $1 trillion, and they're both sort of eyeing each other up, saying, come over here.
Yeah, it would be fascinating. What I would love to understand, is there any other insight from your research which stood out for you?
One of the other things which we were really surprised about was a question we asked was what kind of brands were going to have retail media as part of their investment. And over 44% of those who were surveyed said that they were going to invest in retail media even if they didn't have a product that was sold within that retail media environment. So we would call them non-endemic brands. So I think there's a bunch of businesses, both products and services, that are looking at this retail media space and saying, yeah, shoppers are a very attractive audience. So whether that's credit card companies, other types of finance and insurance. So this non-endemic, you'll hear this a lot. It's like they're really on the sidelines looking at this retail media opportunity. That's going to be a very interesting place to watch over the next couple of years as well.
So do you see the non-endemic brands looking at this as a branding channel or brand awareness channel, or more of a performance marketing channel?
It's definitely performance. So the brands that we've worked with, they've only been successful when they natively integrate into the platform. And let me give you an example of that. If you're an insurance company or a finance company and you're going to run banner ads on a retail media platform, forget about it. Like it's, you might as well just, license a DSP and run ads on the open internet. Performance will be terrible. Now, if you work with the platform and say, look, we want to do something interesting on your platform, what is one of the larger segments? Like going back a couple of years ago, one of the biggest segments on Carousel at the time in Singapore were what we call sneakerheads. We had about 500,000 people who were obsessed trading sneakers. So he said to this insurance company, look, there's about 500,000 audience here that are very passionate about high-end sneakers. Why don't we do some sort of giveaway competition? So they had a competition to win a limited edition Nike Air Jordan. And a couple of caveats to the competition was you had to enter, but you had to actually go to an offline event in order to pick up the prize. And it was the most successful campaign that they'd run all year. And that was a lead generation type of campaign. You have to really speak to the audience and tap into what they're really passionate about. We did another one recently with another insurance company tapping into the luxury segment. We give away a Rolex watch and a Chanel handbag. The Rolex watch, for example, is the #1 searched product on Carousel for the last 2 years, every single month in Singapore. So it made absolutely every sense to do some sort of giveaway around that. Now, again, if these companies had just run banners promoting their services, it would have been a complete flop. So that's the important thing for non-endemic brands. It's like, think about advertising differently on these platforms. How do we tap into what consumers are searching for, what their most desire, for example? And I think non-endemics can thrive.
Very, very interesting. Yeah. So it's the whole integration into the platform, getting the insights, and then running a full-fledged campaign. Wonderful. So maybe looking at how you built Carousell Media, right? It's been a 5-year journey for you. What were some of the decisions that you took to building technology, building teams, and so on, right?
Yeah, I came on Carousel, and back then it was just Carousel in 2019, to build out the advertising business. Around 2021, Carousel bought Jotot and Muda, the biggest marketplaces in Malaysia and Vietnam, and we created the Carousell Media Group. Now that was bringing all 3 marketplaces onto the same ad platform. So we could centralize our operations in Singapore and run campaigns across the region on any marketplace. We tried to make the ad formats parity as well. So to start off, it was really just the basics. Okay, how do we get native formats in? How do we have high impact formats? The next thing we needed to consider was that, okay, we've got some advertisers who are really interested in our data segments, but they maybe only buy video, for example, and we don't really have pre-roll video on Carousel. What can we do from an audience extension perspective? So we partnered with the Trade Desk a couple of years ago, and we launched a Carousel Connect, we call it, which is our off-platform proposition. Then what we've been working on for a number of years was our Carousel shopping ads proposition. And we have 2 sponsored product offerings, which go back to the Carousel store. That was mainly built for our smaller merchants and the C2C side of things. And we needed a proposition for brands. Every brand we were speaking to was like, we've got a strategy around Lazada and Shopee, but all of those ads point back to our Lazada and Shopee store on those platforms. And we have a separate sort of KPI about driving consumers back to our own .com and making sure that we get healthy traffic there, because they obviously then own the user and can remarket to them, etc. So we built the Carousel shopping ads, which was taking a live feed from the advertiser, pulling in the SKU that was most relevant to what people were searching for on Carousel, but then allowing them to click back to the brands.com website where they could own the customer. The next piece is, okay, what can we do with our data? I think we talk about our data being our most valuable asset, but also at the same time, the least valuable asset. And what I mean by that is we know it is absolutely underpins everything that we do from an advertising perspective, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to just go and sell it out there, because selling data is not a very lucrative business. But we wanted to use our data in order to add value to customers. We pushed it to the Trade Desk, and we did make it available to some customers there. But the missing piece is that when iOS got updated and we started losing signal, we knew that we needed to come up with something beyond cookies. So we looked at the various different ID solutions. We looked long and hard at the UID. There was the Connect ID proposition as well, but we eventually landed on the live ramp ID. And what was appealing to us was, with limited resources. So with the ramp ID, we could implement it and then get access to the other IDs through that one ID. So now we're going to be building sort of bespoke custom segments in their safe haven product, and we use the ramp ID for post-campaign analytics as well for off-platform things. So that's 5 years.
Wow. It seems like that's a lot of initiatives, right? I was particularly surprised that you also have a way for brands from your app or your ads to reach Lazada and Shopee, which I think is pretty unique. Is that because you felt you would not be able to cover the full spectrum of advertisers, or was it a need from the advertiser side?
So yeah, we allow some ads to go back to Lazada and Shopee, and it's really only for the FMCG clients because that is an area where we don't play. So the likes of P&G, Unilever, for example. So it's not quite in that sense. It's like the brand will have three strategies. One is like, okay, how do I grow sales on Shopee and Lazada? Well, let's call that one strategy. The other one is like, how do I grow the sales on my own .com? And that is where we want to help them, is with the driving sales on their own site.
Having your own product team is a common pain point for many retail media ads businesses. Also convincing the first set of advertisers to come and spend the dollars, even though retail media is, as you said, people have a budget for it. So could you flesh it out a bit?
Yeah, certainly. So, you're always very privileged and appreciative to have your own product team. Like, they love to build things, So whenever I joined Carousel, part of the roadmap was to build an ad server. And I was like, I love the enthusiasm here, guys, but, Amazon bought Seismic. Facebook bought, was it Atlas back in the day? And even Google bought DoubleClick, So I don't think building an ad server, unless you're a TV network for brands that is going to allow them to click off, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Being able to, accept Google ad tags so they can do all their own post-campaign reporting. So I think one of the most challenging things when I first came on board was actually killing a lot of projects that were on the product roadmap that didn't make a lot of sense. It was like, it's so much easier to go all in with the Google Ad Manager than trying to build our own ad server was one. And there's been a number of things like that. I think it's always a trade-off when you've got limited resources. We do our annual operating planning in October. We're quite meticulous about what we want to achieve in the year ahead. The roadmap gets laid out and it is locked in. The smallest little things, when you've got limited resources, can put your product roadmap off track. Even to deploy an SDK, because there's testing, we've got to take the time out for the developers to get their head around the SDK and learn exactly how to implement it. That's a 2 to 4 week proposition where every third-party ad tech vendor you speak to will say, oh, it's just a little SDK, you can do that in an afternoon, no problem at all.
Been there, sold that same thing. Just take this SDK, we'll be up and running with ads. One thing which I've always noticed about Carousel is your ad experience stands out compared to other publishers. The ad format looks really engaging, just, almost perfect. So what is that secret recipe that you follow?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to, we had a product manager called Julia. She's gone back to Europe, and she was fantastic. And the rigor that went around every single ad that you see on Carousel was quite intense. What we do before we launch any ad, we'll obviously find a placement on the app that we think is applicable. We agree on the format, and then we will design that format to make it more natively integrated with the app. And then we'll test it, and we'll test multiple variations of that. We'll run A/B tests for a few months to see the impact it has on any potential users. Maybe that is downstream impacts around sales or chats or other types of metrics. I'll give you a really good example about this. We have an interstitial format, which most publishers have when the app launches, and the initial trials showed over 4% click-through rate, which a lot of advertisers were quite happy about. We were under the impression that a lot of those clicks were accidental. We give a countdown timer along the top rather than just so people were fully aware of how long the ad was going to last for, rather than just the standard little X in the top right hand corner. There was a close button, so we would make sure that there wasn't any accidental clicks. Now, what happened with that was that the clicks reduced by about half. The click-through rate was still very healthy, around 2%. But when we ran the trials with some clients, what they noticed is that the bounce rate was significantly lower than whenever it had the high click-through rate. Do you want vanity clicks, or do you want more high-quality clicks? And that was just one example of just one specific ad unit where getting the product right can have a really profound effect on the ad performance.
Wonderful. You mentioned that data is one of your assets, and you gave examples of how you have used it for advertisers. But with the whole cookie shebang, cookie going away, multiple IDs, loss of signal, and multiple ways to connect, how do you make sure that the advertiser is with you, because they also get lost in this whatever is happening in the industry, and at the same time make sure that you have the pipes? And at the same time, you're saying it's not making money standalone, right? So what's that balancing act that you followed across sales, tech, and making sure there's a viable proposition around this?
One of the things I was saying to the ID providers in the early days was, look, make this a really simple business case for us. Who are the top 5 advertisers that have adopted your IDs, that are looking for publishers that have scale with the IDs and which they can connect with? And that answer didn't come freely in the early days, and it's probably why the ID took 18 months for us to, formalize and firm up on our product roadmap. And it was actually LiveRamp that came to us and said, here are our top 5 advertisers. They do have limited opportunities to connect with publishers in this region. And I think what we're seeing now is that the Trade Desk have made really good progress with UID, and then you've got the Ramp ID and the Connect ID. I think there's going to be challenges with that. I think it's okay. Let's just assume that everyone who checks out on a brand's website is logged in, so they're either an existing customer or they have to sign out or check out as a guest. I think the question is, how many people check out with a fake email address that you aren't able to reconcile? And we're not quite sure about that. So I think every solution's got a few flaws with it. How do we give as many options to our advertisers as possible? And, I think in the US, there's over 10 different IDs. Luckily here, we really only hear about those 3. And our idea was, okay, let's implement them all, so that whatever an advertiser's preference is, we are able to facilitate that for them.
Fantastic. And do you see the clean rooms getting more and more common? Because ID is a way to connect, right? Have you seen any pilots from your end?
Too early here. Yeah, not yet. There's been a number of talks for quite a while, for the last 2 years, but nothing has come to fruition yet. There's been talks about airlines and ourselves, coming together via a clean room where, for example, they would know that someone's booked a flight to Japan, and we would know that someone's, just bought skis or salopettes, they can put two and two together and go, okay, what can we upsell them around a skiing holiday in Japan? They might know, okay, we've got X 100,000 gold members on Carousel. Either we can exclude them from any marketing messages or just explicitly target them. I think there's so many opportunities, but I don't see a lot of activity happening just yet.
Understood. You gave a lot of examples about online to online, right? Retail media connects the dots perfectly. 3-4 years back, there was a lot of chatter around online to offline, offline to online in SCA. Do you feel that attribution and measurement is strong enough? Do you see maturity there, or do you see still trials?
I think once the likes of FairPrice, DFI, those guys really scale up, there's going to be a ton of opportunity there. I met with the new GM Criteo last night. She was telling me about how they connected online to offline at Macy's, where she built out the Macy's retail media network. And technically, it's actually very simple to do. And so I don't think there's a technological barrier there. So I think it's just once these big players who have that data around the point of sale, it's going to be very simple to facilitate online to offline attribution.
Understood. How do you see the industry 2 years from now?
There's no doubt about it that retail media in Southeast Asia is going to explode over the next couple of years. There's been 2 retail conferences in Singapore over the last month. There's one going on at the moment, and they are just teeming with ad tech providers that are coming in from all over the world. We have people here from the UK, the US, from other parts of Asia, and there's so many conversations going on with the biggest players in the region. I think it's such an exciting time for retail media in Southeast Asia, and you're going to see more innovation coming out of Southeast Asia than you will see out of Europe or Australia. The biggest difference between Southeast Asia and the likes of Europe and Australia is North America will lead the way with an innovation. A couple of months later, it hits Europe. Maybe 6 months later, it hits Australia. But they're always fast followers. And Southeast Asia is similar, but they've got 2 worlds to look at. It's not just North America. It's like what else is going on in Japan, what's happening in Korea, what's happening in China. And it can take the best out of both worlds, the East and the West. So it's a very, very interesting space.
Yeah, I think there was a wave of people emulating live commerce, and there's also TikTok Shop, which kind of is, in a way, retail media on steroids, right? So
Yeah.
It will be fascinating to see how it all, mixes together. But I agree, the opportunity is huge. Maybe if you don't want to advise publishers, what would be your advice to ad tech players who would be dying to meet you and many of publishers like you?
So I actually spoke to a lady yesterday, and she has taken on a new role. It's an APAC remit, and the question that she asked was, can I come to Singapore and do regional deals with brands or providers? And the answer is unequivocally no. You cannot come to Singapore and do that. Every market is different, and you really need to spend a lot of time in each market. The nuances are so different. Again, I was speaking to Ken from Grab last night, and he was telling me they run a CMO summit, and they do it in every single market, as opposed to a Grab CMO summit in Singapore where they get the CMOs from the different countries to fly in. He said it just doesn't fly. Every market, they have all the CMOs from that given market, and it's been super, super successful. So that would be my advice to any ad tech vendor who's coming to Southeast Asia. You cannot just come to Singapore and think that you can do all the business out of here. You must go in market, and there's so much opportunity in each and every market.
Understood. No, thanks, JJ. This has been a very fascinating conversation. We are all excited for the future of retail media in Southeast Asia, and your inputs are extremely valuable. Thank you so much for your time and all your inputs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.